Hello and a very warm welcome to Talking Europe. It started with Portugal, then came Spain. Ireland followed, and so did Slovakia. They all held general elections, but when the ballots were counted, there was no clear government elected. In the weeks that followed, some surprising solutions, like in Portugal, where a leftist alliance was formed, the first since it became a democracy 4 decades ago. Overall, leading parties saw their slice of parliamentary pie radically reduced as the number of seats appointed to each party became more evenly spread. The new challenge was finding who would accept to sit beside who in a coalition. So what has this varied vote led to? What caused it? Is it the austerity measures, the migrant crisis or corruption scandals? And what about these new coalitions being formed? How different and stable will they be? Well, to help us try and understand, we are joined by an MEP of each of those 4 countries I've just mentioned. From Portugal, I have beside me Ms. Maria João Rodrigues. Thanks for being with us. From Spain, opposite side of the table, Ines Alia Sender. Sitting beside you, I have Mr. Brian Hayes from Ireland. And again, at the other side of the table, Mr. Eduardo Kukan from Slovakia. Thank you all for being with us. Let me start perhaps with one of the biggest surprising countries. It was Ireland. But across all 4 countries, we saw these elections, the same really election result, no real winner, no party got a majority. Why, Mr. Hayes?
Because the people decided. I mean, the people are sovereign, and I think in all of these cases, they're quite inconclusive results. Certainly the case of Ireland, the 2 government parties, my own party, Fine Gael, and the Labour Party, both lost significant numbers of seats and votes. It's too easy to say it's all as a consequence of the austerity and the fiscal consolidation. We've been going through this in Ireland for the past 8 years or so. And I think Ireland is the case because up to 20% of GDP was taken out of the country as a consequence of the measures that had to come into being. Clearly, the government was unpopular. And where you are rising tax and reducing expenditure, it's inevitable that people are upset by that. There's a huge challenge there for centre-ground political parties in Europe to see if we can actually regain the initiative over the course of the next number of years.
Centre-ground political parties, though, which did in other countries as well, get pushed, notably more to the left in Portugal and in Spain. Do you, Ms. Rodrigues, think it was about austerity perhaps in Portugal, or was it trying to just move to the left more radically?
Basically, it was because the previous government ran a very harsh program under the Troika regime. And so it was necessary to look for an alternative, which is now being led by the Socialist Party. But frankly, I see a general trend of this kind, not only in Portugal, but in fact in Spain, in Greece, and I would say probably it happened the same in Ireland. So when it comes to countries which were hit by the Eurozone crisis, the response was to look for another kind of alternative.
Ms. Alessandro, do you think that it was the austerity that hit Spain bad?
Part it was the austerity because the EPP from Mariano Rajoy went from the total majority now to really a situation where they cannot govern. There was part the hard program, not only the austerity request from Europe, but also the hidden agenda from the EPP, which was more on privatization and other measures against our health system and our education system, but also the corruption cases, which are daily arriving in the media. But on the other side, there are a growing coalition between Ciudadanos and the PSOE, and on the left. Yeah, and the king gave Pedro Sánchez the possibility to start a conversation. Now we have 2 months for doing that.
We saw that rise of Podemos, notably in Spain. It came 3rd. It took something like 69 of the seats in Parliament. They ran first on anti-austerity, but also on anti-corruption. Which do you think brought it home? It was the corruption?
Well, but I must say that the thing, and now we are seeing just yesterday, this week, that there are also some pressure within Podemos because they came also from fragmented other parties.
This is the main problem now, is trying to get the parties to sit down together. And Podemos itself, the party, seems to be splitting on that very question. But we did see a very surprising result on that coming out of Portugal. You had all the left-wing parties, even the radical left, deciding to club together. How do you feel about that? How's that going to work?
Because this was the only way to really provide the alternative to the right-wing government. But let me tell you that behind these new trends in European political landscape, I think there is a general rule we can identify, is behind this, we have European problems which cannot count on good European solutions. And that's why the political system is under stress now, and we are looking for new solutions. So we see this when it comes Eurozone crisis, lack of growth and high unemployment, and now when dealing with refugees.
But I think people are also, I mean, if one looks, for instance, the United States of America, people are looking for simplistic solutions to problems. The rise of Donald Trump, the rise in Europe of the far right, the far left, squeezing of the centre. People are focusing on simplistic solutions. In Ireland's case, it wasn't extensively the rise of the left per se. It was a rise actually of a party a mix actually, and it's more fragmented now. And no matter what populist parties can promise in terms of money that they don't have to spend, there's a responsibility on people to tell the truth about what we have to spend and how we are going to move from a very difficult crisis-orientated solution to actually getting the economy working for ordinary people again. Because without that, we're not going to get people on our side.
Because I think that was the surprise in Ireland. It had been a country that suffered massively from the economic crisis, but the latest figures put growth forecast at something like 8% for 2016. That's the highest in the EU.
You know, growth, macroeconomic figures, GDP means one thing. Actually, people's pockets, their employment, their children's prospects is quite another. And I think the truth of the matter is this: 90% of the growth this year in the world is not going to be in the European Union. We have to become more competitive.
Well, indeed, so money definitely an issue then, and notably people's own pockets definitely coming out to play. You mentioned there, Ms. Rodriguez, European issues also affecting national elections. We've seen this refugee crisis across the EU coming up a lot. Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, he campaigned a lot on that issue, and indeed it seemed like all the parties in Slovakia were on the same page, keep refugees out. It looks, however, in a way that Fico didn't see. He lost his majority. He's going to reform a coalition government, but he lost his absolute majority. Did he also misread the situation? Are people more concerned about money?
Definitely, he exaggerated his rhetoric about the refugee crisis, which brought Slovakia in a very bad image internationally. And he tried to play this subject till the elections, and it didn't work well. Yes, he lost 34 mandates in the elections, in the parliament. Before, it was one-party government. They had comfortable majority in the parliament. He was always criticizing center-right parties that they try to form the government consisting of several parties. Now he has to do that. Everybody is reminding him how cynical was above in his previous expressions. There he is, and he will form the government of 4 parties. And I think that his exaggerated rhetoric helped some extreme party. It's a neo-Nazi party. Nobody expected it.
But it did seem like there was a lot of people campaigning in Slovakia about this. Apolitical politicians, they were calling themselves, really trying to say we're outside this established. Is that also what's appealing?
If these parties, most of these parties don't want to go into government, because if they go into government within a month, half of their support base goes. I mean, government is about making the right decision. Often those decisions are difficult, and you've got to take people with you. What you're seeing at the moment is fragmentation on the left and the right, and you're seeing it in the European Parliament here as well, from the most recent European Parliament elections, and the centre ground is diminishing. And it is this kind of a populist outpouring that in some way they have some simplistic solution to a problem when they don't. Having come through the worst of this crisis, we now have to get to very solid plans on investment and jobs to prove to people that having gone through this very difficult adjustment, we can come out the other side with real prospects for people. That's the challenge.
That's the point, because we can see that from the right wing and sometimes the left wing, we have some parties coming up calling for national solutions with a populist language. And behind that, from my viewpoint, we have an explanation which is wrong European solutions over the last years. During the Eurozone crisis, it was not possible to find a real European solution to provide growth and jobs while rebalancing the budget.
Do you think governments will go back to that then? Maybe national parties will focus more on national?
But they can't because there are rules. The fiscal rules for Eurozone countries are evidently in place no matter who's in government.
But
No, but that's the point, because
I think that the problem of our parties and governments, even now that is fragmented, the problem is that the problems are no more national problems. They are really European.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's
the refugee crisis.
But our real problem in Europe is we are not going to get to a better place with extra resources until we actually complete the transformations that are required right the way across our labour law and other areas of our society. That we have come used in Europe to getting used to a standard of living that is now not affordable because we are losing our competitiveness.
This is not possible. Our competitiveness isn't on investing, on training, on investing on innovation, on investing on research, and the firms are not
my argument is very simple. So this means that the solution is not going back to national instruments. The solution is to get better European instruments.
Well, I fully agree with that.
Absolutely.
And
this is the key.
I mean,
Yeah,
we all were elected in the most recent European elections on a mandate on the investment, jobs and growth agenda. So we've got to make sure that the opportunities of the Juncker's plan, how we provoke more public and private investment in our economies.
The youth initiative.
The youth initiative. These things have to be now taken as
Absolutely.
European responses.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree to that, but I think it's general phenomena that traditional parties are somehow pushed aside. In Slovakia, it was very, very visible. It's a clear dissatisfaction with them. In our country, many young people participated, those who didn't go to the elections previously. And they don't care about the traditional parties. They voted for the extremist parties. There's something wrong.
Do they have many other options, though? If you're not happy with the centre, is it not logical that you're going to go
They are
to
not
the
voting
extreme?
in favour. They are voting
What else is on the
against
table?
the situation.
Many protest votes.
But is that not then what's needed? That the traditional parties, if you like, need to move a bit?
Well, I think I mean,
Offer
of course,
something.
but it has to be based on what's possible. And I think there are wider problems that we have got to confront in Europe. It took us, I mean, if you go to the United States of America and the US is very critical of the EU for the length of time it took us to resolve this crisis. It's taken us far too long. We have lost too much over the last 7 years. You compare where the US is now in terms of its economy vis-a-vis Europe in terms of jobs and investment.
But you have to recognize that this was because there was the big plan of Obama just to invest massively, and this was the immediate, and we were at the same time
we didn't have the tools,
trying.
though.
I think that we had the tool, but we decided to go on the other side, on austerity, because of some prejudices in macroeconomics, and this is what I think that it was really wrong. Part of that, it was wrong. We cannot compare because the decision was radically different.
So just to conclude, do we think the EU is having a negative impact then on national elections? A quick round the table.
Yes, but we need better European solutions, such as...
So Brussels has to step up and then it'll be easier at home.
Example, completing the economic and monetary union with a real banking union and fiscal capacity. We lack this. Example, we need to have a proper European asylum system working. We need to have a real European border rather than going back to national borders. And we need to have a much stronger plan for investment and jobs.
It sounds like a lot of change, Mr. Kukan. How do you feel about it? EU good or bad for national governments?
I think that, yes, EU was very much criticized by the population. They don't understand why everything takes us that long and doesn't take into account what really people need in their lives, that we are dealing with issues which are somewhere far away from them.
And Ms. Aliasandra?
Yeah, well, for us, Spain has been always very pro-European, but the last elections just show that there were some big doubts. But just because there's no more European solutions, since Agenda 2000, there was a renationalization of the European affairs, radically, and even Germany at that time, who was on the pole position, just decided that it was for them much more better to go to make business with China than with Europe. This was part of our problem. Now the national governments are without any instrument, the European instrument, to face these big European challenges.
Mr. Hayes, is what you were saying was needed.
Well,
really,
I mean, I think in Ireland's case, I don't see the recent election as an attack on Europe per se. I think it's more an attack on the government that we were part of. People were disappointed with the government and our performance. I think people are still broadly very positive in Ireland to the European Union, but they're frustrated at the length of time, I fully agree with you, the length of time it takes to get things done.
Yeah, so Brussels
and to make progress. And we have, having come through this very, very difficult period from sort of the moment of the crash, from the collapse of Lehman Brothers to now, it has taken us such a long period of time. So the next agenda has got to be around provoking demand and getting inflation going again and making sure that we actually have some future for people, and young people especially. Young people will look to the hard left and the hard right if they've no future. So we have got to create a Europe which gives young people a future.
Okay. And very, very quickly, a last word. Are we expecting new elections in Ireland or in Spain? Mr. Hayes?
A new election could happen by accident rather than by design, but I hope a government can be formed.
Yeah, we have the same, because citizens are not in favor of elections. Politicians, we must find a solution among us. This is new for us to have this agreement, but this is our challenge, and we do that.
And finally, the coalitions on the other side of the table, stable, unstable, there for the long haul, Mr. Kukan?
I don't think that this coalition is stable and it will serve full term. So we are also going to have elections.
And Mr. Rodriguez,
Yeah,
radical left.
Socialists. So we need to,
With some radical left parties.
secure now the majority in the parliament, dealing with better conditions in European framework.
And with the budget and all the radical left, it will be able to find a compromise on that?
So far we are being able,
Okay.
but Europe needs also to accept that we need to have another plan to combine growth and fiscal consolidation.
Okay, slightly more hopeful note then to
As
end
in
on.
Spain, as in Spain.
Finally, a hopeful and unanimous note then to end on. Thanks to all my guests for being with us. Thanks to you at home also for having watched. That brings us to the end of Talking Europe.